Hi, my name is Keith Hovis, Deputy Communications Director for the Minnesota Department of Education, and I'm here today to remind you that while it's summer out, it's never a bad time to learn and engage your kids' minds. So today I brought us to the Minnesota State Capitol, where we're going to talk about history and social studies in the summer months. All you really need is a library book or an internet connection, a full tank of gas, or just a helpful librarian. For me, I thought that I would help us today by talking about our own hometowns and a little project you can do just with your child at home, where you teach them a little bit about the history of where you live. For me, I consider myself a St. Paul guy, so I brought you here to the state capitol, where I'm going to talk a little bit about St. Paul, a little bit about the Capitol, and a little bit about the history that I call home.
Built in 1905, the Minnesota State Capitol building was built by architect Cass Gilbert, who would later go on to build such iconic buildings as the United States Supreme Court location out in Washington, D.C. The original building was actually built for $4.5 million, and the first governor to move into the building was Samuel Van Zandt, our 15th governor, who moved in just weeks before the end of his term in 1904. An interesting fact is that in 1857, Minnesota Territorial Governor Willis Gorman made an attempt to move the capital of Minnesota from St. Paul down to St. Peter. The only reason this didn't happen is because a rogue council member named Joseph Rolette absconded with the bill and hid out until the end of session when it was too late for the bill to be signed.
An interesting thing to know about St. Paul is that it was founded by a group of men who were, cast out of Fort Snelling and went down the river and started this great little place that they named after their unofficial founder, Pierre Pigzeye Parent. They named it the unfortunate title, Pigzeye. It wasn't until later when Father Lucien Gaultier moved, the first Catholic priest in the area moved here and started the log chapel of St. Paul, which later would become the Cathedral of St. Paul, that we were given the name that we know today, which became the beautiful city that I call home behind me.
These are some of the amazing facts I found out about my hometown, St. Paul, and about the state capitol here. There's actually an incredible resource right here in the Twin Cities, and that's the Minnesota History Center. If you come here with your family for a day, you're going to be blown away by the amazing exhibits that put you right there in Minnesota history. They also have this great map which points out all the Minnesota national landmarks, such as the state capitol. You can make a day or a month or the summer out of it and try to hit as many of those as you can. Take a tour, see what makes Minnesota tick. You know, there's nothing better after a big day of history learning than just taking a break and sitting down in some shade. But before I let you go, I want to remind you that social studies isn't just about history, as we've been focusing on today. It's also about political science and geography and psychology and a lot of other different aspects and topics that can engage your child. And there are great ways that you can cross-cut these ideas and even further your child's learning. Coming to the Capitol, you can talk about all the great political engagement, the politicians. Learning about your hometown, you can bring in the geography element. You know, the fact that here in St. Paul, the Mississippi River is just a few feet away. It's really interesting things that can really help engage your child and make it an exciting adventure.